Audrey, when we were discussing this call a few days ago, one of the things you mentioned was always trust your instincts. And when things are going bad, I think you recognize that they're going bad. You might try and tell yourself, no, we're okay, even if you know you're not, or you might feel things are going badly when really they're going okay. But why is it so important to trust your instincts? Is there situations that resolve that maybe you don't see that in the data or how the trial is going, but you just in your gut feel like something isn't right here? And I don't see her picture. Did we lose her? Okay, we'll see if she jumps back on. Tommy, I'll just go ahead and go to you then. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've, for the most part, as a sponsor, have been in the industry doing this for a while. And when you go to select a CRO, you do your best to select those CROs that you feel are going to be the best fit. But sometimes things change along the way, and people change, teams change, et cetera, and you might run into some issues. And again, I think it's where we were talking earlier about accessibility and communication. And again, the analogy of a marriage is a good one, because both parties need to work together to make it a success. And I think you can get some early signs or reads if things aren't going well. And I think the quicker you take intervention there and prevent those into festering and becoming bigger issues is really key. But that's where we have to break down the barriers, I think, between us as the sponsor and the CRO, and that relationship and this fear of, oh, we can't go run and tell the sponsor that. I mean, I remember early in my career, I was at, I worked at a couple of big CROs, and in one of the projects I was on, I had the project team tell me, oh, we don't talk to the sponsor, only so-and-so can talk to the sponsor. And and the sponsor was wanting to really, build that relationship and that partnership and have a dialogue with the whole team, because it was a really critical, project for them. And they wanted to understand from multiple individuals how things were going. And we were, encouraged to only share the positives. And, I really had an issue with that early on. And I said, how are we going to make this project a success if they don't have insight into the challenges we're dealing with and we work collectively towards those? And I think, when you encounter an issue with the CRO, before you abandon that group, because you invest so much time and effort in bringing somebody on board and getting them trained and really trying to build that relationship, you need to evaluate, is it solvable? And again, at the end of the day, to your point that Audrey made, is trusting your instinct. Your gut's usually right. And if something feels awry, it probably is. Dig in and try to find out what that is. And if they're unwilling to share, there's other avenues to find that out, whether it's, contacting a site yourself and other aspects. But the more we can be visible and share ownership and responsibility and collaboration in these projects, the better we're going to be successful. And I mean, that goes all the way down to, somebody from the CRO at a site that's running into an issue that needs an answer right then. Maybe there's a patient there. They should be able to call the sponsor and get that support. And, the worst thing we can do is have that run up the chain and, in an hour and a half later, best case scenario, finally get a resolution to a patient that's been sitting in a room now for 3 hours. So I think, again, it goes back to some simple things that we've put these barriers up in a lot of organizations where, we're uncomfortable sharing when things go wrong, but the reality is things go wrong. And in fact, in operations, it's probably a daily exercise, that we're doing issue resolution. So, we're well aware of it. And I think the more we can work together to solve those issues, we can avoid some of these, bad outcomes and bad experiences that we've had in the past with CROs.
Audrey, is it safe to say that if somebody like you or Tommy, who have been in the industry long enough and have worked on enough trials, that if something isn't going right, you just know it? I mean, you can tell by what you're hearing from the people you talk to or data that you're seeing. Is that where instinct comes in? You've just been doing this long enough that you just know if it's not right.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that like E6R2 and now they're looking at ICH E6R3 revision looks at is risk management. So you should have a risk management plan. And some CROs do it better than others. I'm working on a phase 1 study in the UK, and I made this. I had never, well, I shouldn't say I'd never done one myself. I've always gotten them from CROs. So I drafted this one myself, and it's got everything from, other than like an asteroid hitting the Earth, which could happen, it's just got everything that could possibly happen. So it's a respiratory study. So people don't want to come into a clinic if they have COPD. COVID, increases. So, and then you do, likelihood, impact, et cetera. So I think that that's the formal way to do it. What I always tell people is, as a project manager, which is I've been a project manager since I think I was 12 years old, is you sense the train coming down the track before you see it. They're just, like you say, it's instinct. There are certain things. Well, enrollment is a key one, or sites aren't getting activated, or, on a timely basis, or contracts are taking 6 to 12 months. You just have to look at it and say, where can I intervene without being, the obnoxious sponsor, but where can I intervene? And when I got on the project, we already had the CRO, and I just basically said to them, you obviously all have different job functions. I want one spreadsheet, and I'll make it if I have to. I want one spreadsheet with IRBs, ethics committees, regulatory authorities, budgets, contracts, activation date, SIV date. And if you can't do that, I'll do it. But I think you just can't be too, you have to really pay attention. You have to really stay on it. And I do a thing, I think, Ed, you and I met last year at Scope, but I do a couple of talks a year on resourcing internally. But so, some people think, well, the CRO is going to do that. It's like, no, they may, but they're not going to be good at everything. No one is good at everything. And so you have to spend a lot of time really, unfortunately, kind of micromanaging it, if that makes any sense. A lot of it's just gut. But with regard to, again, back to personnel, it's just, do I resonate with this project manager or this person or not? Like, I have a data manager I really like on this study that we're closing down. The new project manager is great. The lady in the general lab area is not so good. So, it's just, you just have to sense where your weak points are and then work to kind of, support those people. And then you have to kind of push it up the chain, up the ladder when you have to.
Yeah, and one thing that came up when we were planning for this call, what are the two most important keys to an effective partnership? What came out of that discussion was trust and transparency. And it's interesting because I think if I was on with a relationship expert and said, what are the two most important keys to an effective marriage, I think transparency and trust would probably be at the top of the list, which again goes back to that. If you can't trust your partner, then they probably shouldn't be your partner. And transparency, I think, just means, I don't know if that relates to culture or not, but you need to let your partner know everything that that's going on. And if you're not both completely open and honest with each other, there's a better chance that things are not going to go well.
I think sometimes that folks at CROs are, how can I say this? I think Tommy said it. It's not that they don't want to tell you the truth. It's that they're afraid to tell you when something's going wrong. So, honey, I shrunk the kids, like either you tell me you did or you didn't, or I forgot to mow the lawn. Well, I can see that. So I think that's the hard part, is I can give all the trust and transparency I can give, and I might get it back, but I might not.
Yeah, and again, think about how you're treating your partner. Yeah, like you mentioned earlier, nobody likes to be yelled at. If you have a partner that's afraid to tell you that maybe something wasn't going right or there was an issue with something, then maybe it's because of how you react when they come to you with bad news. And if you're calm and relaxed and say, okay, this happened, how are we going to manage this and get through it? There's a much better chance you're going to hear about things like that in the future than not hearing about it.
Exactly.